Welcome back to Investor Diaries. This is our home ownership series, video 9. And today we're going to talk about the various nuances that you typically encounter while selling the house. So let's get into it. And Abby, would you help the viewers understand what are the different steps that they have to go through and the various nuances attached to each of these steps?
Yeah, so the first thing that they should be looking at is what are my costs associated with selling a property? Because once you know what your costs are, that's going to give you some idea into what's going to be your eventual profit, and that's going to help you determine what should be your price. So let's look at some of the costs here. The first one that comes to my mind is the legal costs. So the legal cost is important. This is also going to include something known as a statement of adjustment, which gets into play every single time that you're selling a house. The next one is a mortgage discharge fees. So for the purposes of this video, we'll assume that you're still paying your mortgage. And once you sell your house, it means that you'll break your mortgage. And when you break your mortgage here in Canada, depending on whether the mortgage is fixed or variable, you have to pay a penalty, and you'll have to pay a penalty no matter what. Of course, if you own the property 100%, which means that you've completely paid off your mortgage payments, then this would not be applicable. In addition to this, there are a lot of other costs. For example, realtor or real estate agent cost or fees. When you sell a house, there is typically a 5% fees that you have to give to the realtors, buyer and seller together. There are moving costs. So let's say that you are living in this house, and once you sell this house, you'll be going on to a new house. So there would be moving costs associated with it. There is staging fees, which we will cover later in this video itself. There is cleaning fees. And this is small, but still you would want to clean the house, and we'll cover this as well later in the video. And eventually you have something which a lot of people don't consider, but we at Investor Diaries wanted to make sure that we cover this. And this is the cost of waiting. So your house, let's say that you decided to sell in the month of June, but due to whatever reason, it is being delayed by a month and a half. So if it is delayed by 45 days or so, then for those days, you will have to pay tax, interest, principal payments. I wouldn't consider it because that's an equity to you, and any other associated maintenance costs. So as you see that there are a lot of costs associated with it, and that's why it's important to consider it. So in our view, the day you decide that yes, you are ready to sell your house, you should make your house available for sale, which in other words means that you should be listing your house on MLS or similar portals, and it should be made available to a whole host of people.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we discussed about the mortgage prepayment costs and the costs associated with breaking a mortgage. We had talked about that in our earlier videos. But should someone who's selling the house also consider, let's say if they're closer to the end of the mortgage term versus being at the beginning of the mortgage term, should they try to shift the focus on selling towards the end of the mortgage?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that they should speak to their bank no matter what, because obviously when you're closer to your mortgage term, then the penalty goes down.
Yeah.
Now it depends on how close you are, and then you have to consider the opportunity cost of waiting. So I think it depends as far as, and it's a case by case basis. But Nitish, this was a great point. I definitely think that you should speak to your financial institution about this.
Great. Yeah, that's great, Appy. And now Appy discussed about all the costs associated with selling the house. Now the second part of it is the pricing of the house, right? Because that determines what is the value that you're gonna get. Because the obvious answer there too is the higher you sell the house at, the more money you're gonna make, right? Because it's the delta between the price that you sell and all the costs associated with it. When it comes to pricing, what we recommend is you have to work with your realtor with respect to determining the price at which you sell, and you also need to do your research. There are several strategies that are at play here. One could be mark the selling price or the listing price of the house at high, or market low. These are two different strategies that are in play. The price, the listing price as high, then that's the benchmark that you're setting for the prospective buyers, right? So that's going to be their reference price, and they're not going to quote or bid at a price lower than that. Typically they would not. The quote or bid would become higher than that. But the cons of that is if you list it higher, then there are fewer people coming to buy it, because people generally, the human psychology is that people generally want to get in a good deal, so they want to go see or view properties that are listed lower. Now, if you list it lower, the pro is you're going to get more viewership. It's going to attract a lot more attention to your property, right? And then the bid that you're going to get is going to be the perceived value that your property holds in the eyes of the viewer. Now, for example, the property value that you have is, let's say for example, is 600K. You list it at 500K, just expecting more viewers to come and attract more potential bidders. Someone comes, they like the house, it's perfect for the family, they feel it's more catered to the family, it's more fine-tuned for their particular family or their particular individual needs. They decide that they want to go above and beyond the listing or the market value of the house and want to put a price of 700 or 750, just because they want to make sure they get the house, they are the winning bid over others, right? So that leads your house to be sold at a higher place. There's also other advantages. Listing your price, listing your house lower could attract more bidders, and then there's going to be a potential bidding war. And you as a seller always could ask them to ask the final or the few bidders that are close to have another go at it, and again inside a potential bidding war. Eventually, I think you have to look at what strategy works best for you. Again, like Appy mentioned earlier, there is also an opportunity cost associated with it and the cost of waiting, right? So the longer your property is on the market, the longer you're going to incur those costs. So I think you have to assess how much you're willing to spend on waiting and the opportunity cost versus getting a high price on the property.
Yeah, so great points, Nitish. One of the questions I had was for condo versus houses. So can you cover this in a little bit of detail? For condos, is it easier?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great point. So with condos, typically listing the condo lower, listing the condo higher does not really add a lot of value. Mainly because in any condo building, there's going to be hundreds of units. So prospective buyer, assuming the prospective buyer does their homework, would look at comparables, right? So let's say you have priced your again, going back to the example, your market value is 600K, you price it at 500K. The prospective buyer is going to look at comparables over a span of 3 months and say that similar unit was sold at 600K in the past 3 months, and they understand your strategy is you're listing it lower, right? Unless of course your particular unit is somehow special compared to all other units in the condo, which is very very rare occurrence, at least in the GTA market, right? Now when you go to houses, there are a couple of factors at play here. First, typically houses are more unique than a condo unit. Your house is going to be very different or very unique to even the neighboring houses. The other factor here is there are not a lot of comparables that typically a prospective buyer would have. So let's say houses in that particular street or houses in that particular neighborhood, number of houses sold over the last 3 months are typically lower compared to condo buildings. So there's a greater opportunity for you to go with different strategies like pricing the house lower, pricing the house higher successfully in the housing scenario versus a condo scenario.
Okay, that was really insightful, Nadish. We'll probably cover the next one as well in this video, which is choose how to sell your house. So, all that it means is whether you're going to do it yourself or you're going to take professional help in selling your house. Now, our recommendation here at Investor Diaries is if you are selling your house for the first time, then you should go with a realtor. Now, mind you, that when you go with a realtor, you have to pay some commission. The commission will be to the tune of 5%, which we spoke of when we were explaining the cost. The 5% is split equally between the buyer's real estate agent and the seller's real estate agent. So, as an example, if you are planning to sell a house for $500,000, then this fees is going to be $25,000 in agent commissions alone. And that's a major point to call out here, because this can quickly eat into your profits. So you should be mindful of the agent commission fees. This is the single largest fees that is going to come your way. So this is going to, you should take this into account. There are other options as well. So one of them is do it yourself. And by all means, you can do it yourself. When you actually decide to sell the house yourself, there are a couple of parameters. First, you cannot avoid the buyer's commission. That 2.5% you have to pay. Second, you have to pay the cost of, say, the MLS listing or staging, which we'll cover later, but you have to pay these costs. So you're not really saving a whole lot, but in the context of, say, $1 million house, you would still end up saving some money.
So that was great, Api. We've covered a couple of points here while to cover the different nuances while selling the house. There are a few more points that we want to discuss. Let's cover that in our subsequent or an upcoming video. Folks, stay tuned for the upcoming video for the complete list of nuances that you typically encounter while selling the house. So until then, stay tuned and goodbye.
Thank you so much.